Battle of the note-taking clients, OneNote versus Evernote. Who will win on today's Wednesday Morning Drive? Hey everybody, Matt Cribbs here, and welcome back to another Wednesday Morning Drive. How you doing? I'm doing pretty well. Hope you are too. You may have noticed that I'm a little bit of an organization nerd. I like to keep things clean. I like to keep things organized. And one of the key components of that is my notes, my digital notebook and lesser physical notebook, but mainly my digital notebook. And there's many choices for this. There's lots of different software you can use, and I've used them a lot, but the two main choices you're going to be looking at if you want a digital notebook free is OneNote or Evernote. And so the question is, which is better, OneNote or Evernote? And honestly, like so much else in this world, the answer is it depends. But I wanted to give you my perspective on OneNote versus Evernote and what I use and why. And the answer is actually convoluted, and it's a long history. Well, the short answer is currently Evernote, but beyond that, spoilers for the rest of it. So I've started using notebooks, oh God, years and years and years ago. I have notes going back 8 years probably, at least 5, 6, I think 8, something like that. I have over 90,000 notes in my notebook, and that's a lot. A lot of it is because I actually archive old emails into my notebook for reference. So I have a lot of notes. I've used it for a long time, and I have a pretty good handle on how these different systems work. So OneNote or Evernote, what's the difference? Well, the main difference between OneNote and Evernote, beyond all the bells and whistles, beyond green and purple, beyond all those, different layout formats, the main difference is the way they organize things. Evernote is very simplistic. You have notebooks that you can group into stacks, and notes live within notebooks. And that's it. You also have tags, and tags are, you can have hierarchy of tags, you can apply tags to anything across the notebook. Tags are the tags we all know and love for anything. And really, you build your organization out of that. Very simple blocks. OneNote, on the other hand, has a kind of hierarchy of notebooks with tabs across the top, and then inside each tab you can have notes that are within there that appear down the right or left side depending on the client, and those can actually be stacked. You can have sub-notes within the notes, you can have groupings of sub-tabs within the tabs of the notebook. You can do all sorts of fancy hierarchical organization within the notes, but they don't have tags. And the key difference between those, so basically you're thinking they both have hierarchies. The key difference is a note can live in multiple tags at once, but it can only live in one physical notebook. So in Evernote, something is in multiple places. It's in one notebook, but since you only have notebooks and groups, you have very little hierarchy. So that's your broad categories: work, personal, that's about it. OneNote, on the other hand, since you have the hierarchy, and that's really the only way to organize things, every note only lives within one. I think actually, and I haven't used it, but to be fair, I do believe you can make a copy or link to a note into another notebook. So not strict, but in philosophy, that's really how it was originally envisioned to work. So that's the main difference. On the note side, they actually do have differences within the contents of the notes. Evernote is kind of more text-based hierarchical. You can embed those, but OneNote is really a blank canvas. That notes are chunks. It's kind of more PowerPointy as opposed to Word, whereas, Word, you have the text in there, you can have your bulleted list, they kind of flow. OneNote is more like, you can have a text block here, but you can move it around, you can move images around, you can put tables anywhere. So it's a much more free-form layout tool than that. But that's really in my experience, a minor type visual thing. It does have some small play. So those are the main differences between the two programs. Historically, I started with Evernote. I started with Evernote years and years ago, and that's where I did my note-taking. And it worked. It worked great for me. But, 2 years ago I switched. And I switched to OneNote and gave it a try for the past year and a half. And then last week, actually, I switched back to Evernote. And I want to go a little bit into why I made those choices, and then my thoughts on using the two different platforms. So, mainly, the main reason I can speak. The main reason I switched from Evernote, away from Evernote, was, frankly, performance. It stores everything in one big account. Notebooks are sections within that account, basically, and when you sync all your sync notebooks. And with 90,000 notes in there, Evernote fell over. It would take 15, 20 seconds to open a new note. Sometimes you would open a note and it would be blank. It would take over a minute for the program to start up, and it couldn't handle the amount of content I had in there. So I started looking for an alternative. Found OneNote, gave it a good go, used it for a while. And since it breaks each notebook is a separate file, it was very easy to only sync the ones I wanted, and if I didn't need to access my email archive, I wouldn't even open that notebook, or wouldn't even look at it. So the performance was great, and the organization at first seemed amazing. I went nuts. I went crazy. I started, putting things in sections and hierarchies, and it was beautiful. It was a beautifully organized system. Also, I share a big portion of my notes with my wife, and actually with my fridge. Just to lay out the usage of it, I have Evernote on my laptop. I have it, or whatever, both of the programs. I have it on my laptop. I have it on my desktop in both Windows and PC and Mac mode. I have it on my phone. I share a set of notebooks with my wife on her phone and her laptop. And we have a third account that we use for an iPad we have mounted on our fridge that is used for reference around the kitchen. We put our to-do list on there. We put our notes on there so that it's, and timers and things like that. Fridge pads are awesome, but we use it for there. So there's 3 different accounts involved in sharing across, a slew of different devices. So obviously syncing and access is very important. The good news is both programs do it very, very well, and very little difference in the way they use, except for that notebook account versus file type format. Using Evernote, I have to go into a notebook and I have to share it. If I have a family notebook, and since, there's only notebooks in stacks, if I want to have like a home notebook, a financials notebook, something like that, then I would have to share all of those individually. Currently, I just deal with one family notebook and I share that with everyone, and then I have, all my different little personal notebooks. But, that's how you basically share that notebook. Any organization she wants to do on her side is up to her, which is great, I suppose, because, the individual users can do it however they want. OneNote, on the other hand, though, once you have, sometimes notes only make sense in the context they're in. So when you set up the hierarchy, it's tied within that file of the notebook. If you share that file, you share basically a whole substack of everything that's in it, with the tabs, with the organization, with all that categorization. And it's great to easily take a reference library, take a thing that's already been organized, say into the recipes section, and go bam, bam, go, here's the notebook, here's the tab, there's all the recipes. Evernote, it's a little bit harder to teach someone and ramp someone else who didn't set it up how to use it. But they both work pretty well. So why did I switch back from OneNote then? What did it? Well, funny enough, it was actually that hierarchy and, in some sense, that free-form editing of the text that you get. So I discovered, after using OneNote for over a year, that I wasn't keeping it clean. That extra mental effort to find where in my organizational structure I want to put a note was friction enough to make me reluctant to create and categorize a note, which means I ended up with one big inbox notebook that had everything just randomly shoved in there and wasn't really organized. Also, individual notes, since you can put things all over, I ended up with notes that had little text blocks all over the place. Sometimes they were related, sometimes they weren't, and it was just a visual and organizational mess. And that happens because usually when you're taking a note, you're kind of in a hurry. You just want to get the information, shove it into something, and then organize it later. Well, the friction and mental effort it took to organize and clean things up was enough that I ended up just not doing that. So I ended up with a mess, and over time that built up to the point where I didn't even want to make new notes. I didn't feel like going into, oh, my notebook is such a mess, I have to organize that someday, but not today, and you know what, I'll put this on a post-it. And so I just found my usage of my notes declining over time, and I just wasn't using it. I wasn't accessing the data in it as well. I wasn't putting new data into it, and a system you don't use is a system that's worthless. So after that, I decided, maybe I'll go give Evernote a try again. And I went back and I did, and good news is the performance issues, even with 90,000 notes, have been solved. It's been a joy. I haven't fully recovered yet. When you sync notes, when you migrate notes from one system to another, you lose some of the data that's in there. Now all of my notes say created in Microsoft OneNote, even if they were or not. Oh well, I'll get over it. But yeah, so I still have a little bit of the cleaning to do and organization to do to get back into the Evernote system. But that's what I ended up with, is that for my workflow and for the way I work, that simplicity is what matters, and using the search is what matters. And that is really the key for why, for me, I think Evernote was the better system. OneNote is still great. I loved it, and it's a lot of cool features. I think if you're doing more structured note taking, if you're doing actual note taking or organization within the app, OneNote is probably your better choice. If you're just jotting notes, saving PDFs for reference, and doing that, I think you'll probably end up on my side where Evernote works better for you. So it really depends a lot on usage. For me, since I work in a shared corporate environment, a lot of that, structured documentation stuff is handled in Google Docs because that's what everyone else in the company uses. So that's where it is. But yeah, a couple other little things that came up that kind of made the difference a little better. Web clipping. I use web clipping a lot. Evernote's web clipper is far, far superior to OneNote's. OneNote's, when I first started using it, was almost useless. It would frequently crash. The notes it created off of a clip were horrendously formatted, unusable, and it might it was like a version 0.05 or whatever. I don't know, but I'm happy to say, over the past year or so, the OneNote team has made tremendous progress in that web clipper. They know, I'm sure, that it's something that people want and use a lot. I use it extensively for recipes. We'll find something online, clip it to the notebook, bam, it's on the fridge, and we can use it without having to look it up off of what site it was originally on. But they've put a lot of work into it, and I will say, while the Evernote web clipper, especially with its simplified view, just does a better job at capturing the web page content into a note format, the OneNote clipper is not anything to sneeze at anymore. It's perfectly good. I would say Evernote wins, but OneNote is now usable and good. So there's that. I would say Evernote, a weakness of it is it can be very, very frustrating at times to get a note to actually not be butt ugly, especially if you've copied stuff from another source. They do all sorts of internal markup within the note that can really get screwed up, where you'll just say, I want to delete these lines, and all of a sudden the heading formatting and stuff will all change completely. You can do simplified note formatting. It loses it really radically simplifies the formatting, but it doesn't, it'll stop all the screw ups that happen there. But on the flip side, these are notes. They're supposed to be easy to read. They're not documents. So that's where I stand. That's what I think. For me, Evernote works better, but OneNote, perfectly good tool, I think, for a different use case. Hope that gives you a little insight on why the strengths and weaknesses of each program and how they work and how they might work for you. Any other questions, certainly let me know. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel, do Lineage, other new game coming up soon, as well as Wednesday morning drives every week. Until next time, until next week, hope you have a good week. Keep playing, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.